chapter 3 here in the Maimer. So we're in Hamishpatim Tashrim Aleph. We are in the middle of the second paragraph. We're towards the end of, I think, of the second paragraph here of chapter 3. So we've been discussing the idea of Kisikna Eved Ivri, right? We asked the question about, it says, Hamishpatim Asher Tasim Lifneihem. These are the laws that you should place before them. Kisikna Eved Ivri. So we asked, it seems grammatically inconsistent. Starts with talking directly to Moshe. These are the laws that you should place before them. And them is, so he's talking directly to Moshe, but about a third party, right? And then he says, Kisikna, when you will acquire. So who are we talking about? He's talking to Moshe about the third party, the Eden. And here he says, what are you going to tell? Kisikna Eved Ivri. It should say, Kiiknu Eved Ivri. When they would tell them that when they should acquire, and so on. So we answered, and we said, Kisikna Eved Ivri. We said that Eila Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lifneim, Kisikna is all talking to Moshe. And Kisikna is an explanation, it's a commentary on Asher Tasim. That Asher Tasim Lifneim means that you should teach them the laws, but not just teach them the laws, but it should be in a way of Tasim Lifneim, that it should be in a way that they understand it. Tamam Yashiv Talmudam, they understand the reason behind the laws, and like that it becomes theirs. Right? In other words, they understand it so well that they acquire it. And that's the meaning of Kisikna. To what extent does there have to be Asher Tasim that you have to place before them? How well do you have to teach it to them? To the point that Kisikna, that it becomes yours. You take ownership over it. Right? That's what we said. But then the Rebbe says, in the second paragraph here of chapter 3, that in the simple understanding of the words of the pasuk, so in the way we just explained it, Kisikna, it's a drush. It's a nice drash that Asher Tasim Lifneim Kisikna. But really, in the simple meaning, it's two different things. Asher Tasim Lifneim is talking to Moshe about what he should tell the Yidden. And then Kisikna is already a new thing. That's what's going to happen that they should acquire. So it's two inyanim, two different things. That's simply what it means. That's the simple implication of the pasuk. So the Rebbe wants to explain here, in the second paragraph here in chapter 3, what is added when we say Kisikna that's not an Asher Tasim. Asher Tasim Lifneim, you have to place it before them well enough that they understand they acquire it. And then Kisikna is already a new thing. That's talking about what happens at the Eden. So he explains, prefaces it by explaining that we quoted the Gemara that says, discussion about whether a Talmud Chacham, a scholar, is able to renounce his honor, right? Forgive his honor. So it says that a Talmud Chacham can. Why? Because the Torah is called his Torah, right? The pasuk in Tehillim that the Gemara quotes is where it says, "Ki b'seres Hashem cheftzoi v'serasa yagayim v'layla," right in the beginning of Tehillim, that the person, his desires is Torah Hashem, and he studies diligently his Torah. So call it his Torah of the person who studies Torah. And we quoted in note 26 from the Chidah that this is, this is even lahalacha, that somebody who learns Torah, knows Torah, but he doesn't know it in a way of Tasim Lifneim, he doesn't know Tamai Miyashiv Talmuda, he doesn't know the meaning, the reasons behind it. He doesn't know the reason behind it. So he can't be Meichal Kvaydei. He can't forgive his honor because it's not his. He doesn't have ownership over the Torah. But if he does understand the reason, so then it becomes his, right? So we see lahalacha even that's how we paskin about it. So the question though is, what's the greatness of it? The pasuk says Torah Hashem cheftzoi v'seirasa yagayim v'leila. It starts as Torah Havaya and then it becomes Torah of the person. How is that Torah enhanced? It seems that the Torah is lower because of that. First it's God's Torah, and then it becomes the person's Torah, so that's a lower level. So the person himself obviously becomes, this is great, the person's going up, but the Torah seems to be coming down. So what we explained was that the idea that Torah becomes a person's Torah actually brings out the greatness of Torah, or a deeper level in Torah. And we explained, we gave an example, last class of the Arim, which we talked about in last week's parsha, and the Aron is synonymous with Torah. The Aron Habris represents Torah. So it says about the Ark of the Covenant in the Mishka, the Beis Hamikdash, it says that Makam Aron Einim Min Amida, that the Aron didn't take up space. So we know that the Aron had dimensions, right? It was Amasai V'Chetzi Yarkei, V'Ama V'Chetzi Rachbei. It had dimensions, and yet when you put it into the Holy of Holies in the room and you measured from one wall to the other wall, you had 20 cubits, and then when you measured from one wall to one side of the Aron, you had 10, and from one wall to the other side, to the other wall of the Ark, you had another 10. So there was 10 amas in between, and yet 20 amas all the way across. In other words, the 2.5 amas of the width of the Ark didn't take up any space, right? So what does that mean? So obviously that's a miracle that defies any knowledge. But what's the point of that miracle? What's the meaning, the significance of the Aron having definite dimensions and at the same time not taking up any space? What's the symbolism of that? So you have space and you have higher than space, right? There's space. We live in a world of dimensions, of borders, and of space, and everything takes up space. And one thing occupies one space, and it can't be occupied by another thing that takes up other space, fills other space. And then you have higher than our created reality, our limited creation, where there is which is beyond space. So there's a domain that is defined by space, and space means that it's limited, confined to its spatial dimensions, and it can't take up, something occupies a certain space and that's it. Nothing else could occupy that space, and it can't occupy another space at the same time because it's occupying its space. And then you have higher than space. Higher than space means limited to not taking up space. But then when you have the Aron, you have two extremes come together. These two opposites come together. Any kind of definition, behind any kind of characterization. So it's not just that, or put in other terms that we've used in the past, there's gvul and there's bli gvul, there's finite and there's infinite. And God is not limited to finitude, obviously, and he's not even limited to infinity. He could be both. And so that's what is represented by Makim Aron Min Amida. The same is true with regard to Torah. Torah is Torah's Havaya, it's God's Torah. Torah is higher than human intellect. Torah is God's infinite wisdom. Infinite wisdom can't come into a finite mind, into a finite space. And then you have the way we understand Torah is a finite way of understanding Torah, which is a lot smaller at a much lower level than Torah as it is, Torah Savai, as it is up in heaven. And yet the ability that we have to understand Torah represents, that points out that Torah is beyond being limited to infinity. The Torah is beyond just being stuck, relegated to the heavens, but Torah, since it can come down into human intellect, so that represents a much higher level in Torah. So when we say it starts as Torah Savaya, and then it ends as Torah of the person, it's not that the Torah is diminished, but as the opposite. We're revealing a higher level in Torah. That Torah itself is not limited to any of these definitions. Yeah? Okay. So how does that happen? So let's look inside here. We kind of finished the class. We discussed this outside, but we didn't read the punchline here of this inside. So Vahainu, we're right about in the middle of the second paragraph of chapter 3. Vahainu, it's the last two words of the line. I'm sorry. So before we actually get to the Vahainu, let's take a look at note 27. In Samach Vav, so the Rebbe Rashab talks over there about the fact that Torah, since it comes from Eirin Seif, beyond the Tzimtzum, so Tzimtzum, the limitation, the contraction, that's when we talk about things starting to take shape and form. So as Torah is after the Tzimtzum, so higher is higher and lower is lower. So if the Torah is coming down, the light of the Torah or the intensity of Torah diminishes as you go lower, and comes down here either in a much more diminished form or entirely not, it can't come down here. But since Torah, the source of Torah, is before the Tzimtzum, so there's no higher and lower, right? So therefore it can come all the way down here to the lowest world as well. Okay? But now the Rebbe continues, let's go back inside. The fact that the Torah, as it comes down into this world, into the lowest places, It remains in its essence, which is Chachmas Shakadosh Baruch Hu, God's wisdom. Hine adirabba al yidei yiridasa lamata nasaba yisrin lagabi dagas ateri k'may shayis lamayla lefnei yiridasa lamata. So therefore, not only is it not diminished, but on the contrary, now we reveal something greater in Torah as a result of it coming down. Why? Because it's through the Torah coming down into this world that we reveal in it its true source, which is the Eirin Seif HaBligvul, the divine light that's beyond any limitation, beyond even being limited to infinity. So the fact that the Torah could come down into our world and into such a finite space as our human intellect, that reveals that Torah is really higher. So in other words, if Torah couldn't come down into our minds and into our world, so we would know Torah comes from a very high place up in heaven, but it's infinite and it's limited to its infinity. But the fact that it could come into our intellect, this reveals that what's the true source of Torah is not Eirin Seif after the Tzimtzum, but Eirin Seif HaBligvul. When we say Bligvul here, we mean beyond any kind of even the gvul, the limitation of infinity.
But at the same time, isn't it Mislavish from Gashmin? So technically it is going down in a way. No?
The source is not changing, therefore it is
right, but
compatible anywhere.
Right, even though it's Nislabish and Dvarim Gashmim, it's still, that's what he says over here. It's still divine. We're going to see soon another harder. We'll see another halachic ramification of what that means. That Torah, even as we understand it, is still divine. So the fact that it retains that divinity means that it's not lower. The fact that it comes into this lower packaging shows that it actually comes from a much higher source. Okay, let's keep going here and finish the paragraph, then we'll go back to these few footnotes here, because okay, let's go. So just as we said now, this is all preface to explain this idea to answer this question about Torah, of how we connect the idea of Asher Tasim and Kisikna, how Kisikna is a new thing. Right? So he says the same is true when we talk about how a person understands Torah. Right? When it comes Asher Tasim Lifneim, the person understands it very well. It becomes his Torah. That even after a person understands the Torah, it becomes his Torah, nevertheless it still remains Torah's Havaya, God's Torah. Through the fact that Torah's Havaya, it starts as Torah's Havaya, right? And then it becomes Torah Soy. So when the Torah becomes Torah of the person, it is even greater than it was when it was just Torah Savaya. Right? So it's interesting because the simple meaning of the pasuk is Torah Savaya and Torah Savaya. We're talking about the same thing. We just called it Torah Savaya, and then we said once we already identified it as Torah Savaya, God's Torah, we call Torah Savaya His, meaning God's. But the Gemara then says Torah Savaya means of the person, not that it's the Eibish's Torah. It's God. It's the person's Torah. So then suddenly we have the question, so it's lower. So here the Rebbe is explaining, no, the opposite. When it becomes the person's Torah, then it's actually higher than Torah Savaya. How so? Ki zeh sheTorah Savaya nasis Torah shel Adam, u'ba'ofen shegam la'achri shenasis Torah shel Adam, hin nisheres b'mohusa Torah Savaya. And nevertheless it remained, even though it comes down and becomes the person's Torah, yet it remains Torah Savaya. And even so, we're still calling it the person's Torah. How is that possible? That's by introducing this higher level, by revealing the Eirin Seif, which is higher than Havaya, which then connects and unites the person with Havaya. Yisrael and Kodesh Brichu are all one. Meaning, how did they become one? There's Yisrael and there's Kodesh Brichu. How did they become one? By revealing the essence, which is even higher than those two levels, so to speak. And that's how, so when Torah becomes the person's Torah, and at the same time we're saying not only, even as it's the person's Torah, it's still the Eibish's Torah. How is that possible? How does that coexist? Because the source of Torah is higher than both the person and the Torah's Havaya, the level of Havaya. And so therefore you can have the two together. What does this mean? Because you asked this, what does it mean when we say that the Torah, as it becomes the person's Torah, still remains Torah's Havaya, it still remains in its essence? So let's start with note 31. Right? The Rebbe explains this halachically. It says, Lahoyer, Dezeh she'ein divrei Torah makablim tuma l'meidim ha'kosav halakoi dvarei ka'esh. The din is that Torah, the divrei Torah is not mekabel tumah. In halacha it talks about this idea about a person who is tameh. You have tumah scary whether a person could learn Torah, he can think Torah. So it's a whole sugya. And the point is that the bottom line is that Torah, divrei Torah are not mekabel tumah. They're not susceptible to ritual impurity. Yeah, and where do we learn that from? Down a level to become the Torah of the person. Now it's called Torah of the person. And now what we're saying is that then, and you can't call it the Eibusher's Torah anymore because now it's mine, right? It's the person's Torah. So if that's the case, then we don't have a limud over here. The word over here is like this: that Torah, as a person understands Torah, can't become tummy. Why? Because dvarai ka'esh. Who's dvarai? Whose words are compared to fire? Hashem's words. But if I understand it, and it's not Hashem's, it's mine. It's Torah of the person, right? So then we lose. So you lose the proof. So taka the Eibusher's Torah, as it is his Torah beyond my understanding, maybe he's not makabel tumah. But so in other words, the din should be if this is how the pshat over here that it goes from being Torah Savaya and then it's no longer Torah Savaya. Now it's only Torah of the person. So then the din should be that when I don't understand Torah, then it's talking not Makabel Tumah. But when I understand it, it should be Makabel Tumah. It's not Dvarai of the Eibishter. Right? So he says, since we're saying the Pirush is the Dvarai Ka'esh, the given should Dvarai da HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's because the Eibishter's Torah, his words, L'cheinu Ka'esh, ein Makabel Tumah. V'arei din zeh shedivrei Torah ein Makabel Tumah. This din, that the words of Torah are not Makabel Tumah, gam bezeh shatayra nikras al shmoi. Even when it's called the person's Torah, meaning when he understands it, Ki gam shatayra dilehi, even though the Torah is now his, the person's, he Torah is Havaya Dvarai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It still remains God's Torah. Right? So we even have a halachic sort of manifestation of this idea that even as the Torah becomes Torah of the person, it still remains in its original form God's Torah. And so now it's deeper. Because when it's comes down, it's dafka, when the Torah comes down into this world, it reveals its true essence, which is Erin Sefer Bligvul, right? So when the Torah becomes a person's, that actually is an enhancement in Torah. It reveals a greater depth in Torah, a greater dimension that wasn't revealed before. So note 28, the Rebbe takes it a step further. He says like this: it says over there like this, that the fact that Torah could be above and below, as we're saying here inside the Maimer, that it could be Torah Savaya and it could be Torah of the person, that's because it comes from Erin Sefer Bligvul, from that the infinite light that's beyond any kind of limitation, even limitation of infinity. But but the fact that Torah is primarily down here in this world, that is from the source of Torah being an Atzmos. In other words, he's adding another point here in the footnote. It says, the Gemara says by Matan Torah, right, in Gemara and Shabbos, that the Malachim protested, the Eibusher is giving the Torah, and the Malachim said, T'nahit Chal Shamayim, leave the Torah up here in Shamayim. Why are you giving it down to people? So the Eibusher says to Moshe, knew what to respond. So what's Moshe Rabbeinu say? Klum. Aveim yesh lechem, klum mitzrayim yiradetem, right? Yetzahari yesh b'nechem. Moshe says, look at what it says in the Torah. It talks about kibbud av ha'em, honoring your parents. It talks about being taken out of Egypt. It talks about a temptation and desires and overcoming those desires. So he says, look at what it says in the Torah. It doesn't apply to you. You weren't in Egypt. You don't have a Yitzhahar. You don't have parents. None of these laws in Torah apply to you. So we see that Torah is dafka meant to be down here in this world. That was the intention. Furthermore, the Gemara says the famous story with the Tanner of Achnoi, with Rabbi Eliezer Gadol, that there was the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim about the whether a certain type of oven is susceptible to tumor or not. Rabbi Eliezer said not. The Chachamim said it was. Right, the oven of Achnoi that was made of parts, and suddenly heaven and earth are shaking in support of Rabbi Eliezer, right? And a heavenly voice calls out that the halacha is like him, and the Chachamim said they weren't intimidated, and they said sorry, but the halacha follows the majority. We're the majority, and the halacha is like us, right? We don't Torah leba shamayim. They said the Torah is not in heaven, and so therefore this is how we understand it. This is what it is. So and that's taka what the halacha is. The halacha follows the chacham down here. In other words, that in heaven you don't have the ultimate authority on Torah. The ultimate authority was given down here. So we see that Torah is dafke lamata. So in the Maimer, inside here, we're talking about Torah being up above and being down here equally. That it's Torah's havaya and it's Torah down here, and it's just right, but here he's adding another point. In the Maimer, he says over here that the fact that the Torah, even if the Torah is the same in heaven and on earth, but the fact that it's on earth already reveals a deeper depth in Torah. Okay. Now in the footnote, the Rebbe adds another point, which is it's not only that it's equal, right? That the fact that the Torah is b'shava, right? That's taka, as we said inside Shar Shabbat and Sefer Bligvul. But here the Rebbe is adding another point, that the Ikar HaTorah dafke lamata. That it's not, they're not equal. Torah is dafka down here. This is where Torah is ultimately studied and understood and applied. So where does that come from? That, he says, comes from Atzmos. Why? I'm thinking he doesn't really explain it here, but the pshat, the Gemara, we quoted from the Gemara before, about the whole idea in Torah is the Ratzon Elyon, the way the mitzvahs and the Yidden doing the mitzvahs are mushash and Atzmos. So mitzat Atzmos, it has to be down here. By the way, this is not. I think that if you think about this idea, it's not unlike what we talked about in the last Maimer in Basi Lagani, the idea of the lowest being rooted in the highest, right? So it's dafka in the mata that you have to get all the way up to the essence. So when Torah is equal above and below, that could be taka Eirin Sof. Eirin Sof abligvul, Eirin Sof higher than the tzimtzum, meaning Eirin Sof as it is beyond even definition, but it's still Eir, it's still light, right? So the idea of everywhere, kol alma b'shava. The idea that it's equal everywhere, that could still be an Ur. It's not necessarily an Atzmos. But when we talk about Torah mitzvahs and the application of Torah mitzvahs as it is dafka down here, that is because that's how it's rooted in Atzmos, in the essence of Eibusha, which is even higher. So it comes out we have another level here. Okay. It's nicht masber. It is nicht masber. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it is nicht masber. But what's the pshat? Because that's the whole idea. That the idea of kiyama mitzvahs, limit down here lamata, or the inyan of dir betachtoinim that happens as a result. He doesn't explain it really. Where does that come from? The stem von atzmos taka. It's not already not an oir. That's mitzad atzmos. So therefore, the application of it, that has to be from Atzmos. Okay. But that's already another point, which is how we find that Torah is primarily down here, not above. Okay, let's keep going here. Note 29 over here. He says that there's a Yisroin, L'gabi Dagas Torah Commission Mitzad Atzmos Torah Savayis. He says over here, note 29, the Torah Soy, red light Torah Chaim, that the Torah Soy Hilamayla Torah Savaya. When we call it Torah Soy of the Eibishter, of the person that's higher than Torah's Havaya, Torah is its God's. Another point we're going to get to soon. Why is it here we're saying Torah Soy, when we call it the Torah Soy of the person, so that reveals the a higher source in Torah than when it's merely Torah's Havaya. So here we're saying, why is that? Because we see that the Torah is not limited to any kind of definition. It could be above, it could be below. But the Rebbe says, what we're going to say later in chapter 11, from Torah's Chaim, that over there he talks about why is Torah Rasai higher than Torah's Havaya, because of the idea of Esek HaTorah. But we'll get to that later. Okay, let's look at note 30. Yashleimar dezeh shatayr nasis toyrasay shala adam shnimser lebalusay shlachin yachal limchal al kveda yirida gdayla yesem iz shatayr yard lisabish psechel noshi v'lachin gam ali agil derin sev abligol shaydei rida zu yali gdayla yesem. When the Torah becomes the person's Torah, right, it becomes his ownership that he can then rule on Torah, right, and legislate. So that seems to be an even lower step than as it's merely understood in a person's mind. So therefore, we see that this idea that the power, that the authority that the Yid has over Torah reveals an even greater, that descent has to bring about a greater ascent, which is the revealing the true essence of the source of Torah. Okay, yeah.
We say that there's a din that Torah is not mekadoton because it's like in the fire.
Yeah. So it's Torah is like it's a bunch of things. So you use these similarities to learn different things. It's like in the Gemara, you have always all these things of the Loyri Zekri Zeh and the Tzad HaShavah, when you start bringing you start bringing from different elements to learn different points. I can't learn it entirely from here, so you bring something else. Yeah.
I don't think the Torah is water. The way of Torah is like water.
Each one brings out a different point. The Dvar Ka'esh represents this idea of it's Nimshal but it's also Nimshal Lamayim. Torah is Nimshal Lamayim because water it remains the same as it's above and as it comes down. So the water comes from a spring, it might come down from a mountain. Well, that's what the pasuk says. The pasuk says Dvar Ka'esh. It's like a fire. Why is it like in the fire? That's the idea. Just as fire is not susceptible to say. That's the whole point of that analogy. Yeah. Okay. Okay. V'hinei, chapter 4. V'hinei shnei inyanim anal shabbatayra. These two things that we have in Torah, which is what? K'moishi hi Torah's Havaya. As Torah is Torah's Havaya, meaning beyond our comprehension. And then K'moishi Torah Rasei Shal Adam Haloimda, and then Torah as it becomes Torah Rasei of the person who studies it. Hem b'darech klal ha-Torah K'moishi b'Atzilus, K'moishi b'Bria. This is similar to Torah as it is in Atzilus and as it is in Bria. In other words, everything we said now in chapter 3 was all trying to explain this idea of Asher Tasim and Kisikna. Right? It was a preface to understanding. We first explained, we said at the beginning of the class here, that first understanding was Asher Tasim Lifneim Kisikna is all talking to Moshe Rabbeinu, or to the teacher who teaches Torah. That what's Tasim Lifneim, that you have to place it before them, and they understand it to the extent of Kisikna that they acquire it. But we said there's another point, that there are two different things. There's Asher Tasim Lifneim, teach it them that they understand it well. And then there's a new thing which is Kisikna. So we preface it by bringing these 2 points of Torah Havaya and Torah Rasei of the person. There's Torah Havaya, there's Torah Rasei of the person, and how Torah Rasei of the person reveals a greater depth. So now the Rebbe is going to tie it together. This is like this. That these 2 things are this idea of Torah as Torah Havaya and Torah is another teaching, and he says why does Torah start with Beis? Because Torah, as we understand it, is only Torah as it comes from Bria, the world of Bria, right? They also have Aleph and Beis, Aleph Atzilus and Beis is Bria, right? But also first and second, you have Torah as it's higher, as it's in the world of Atzilus. That's Torah that's higher than the Torah as it's come down into this world, into how we understand Torah, and our Torah is already a Torah of Bria. So what does this mean? So Mavur b'Chassidus. Right? We say in davening, right? The Torah, we say in benching, right? We say in benching, your Torah which you taught us. So Chassidus explains, Torah is your Torah as it's in Atzilus, you taught us, you gave it to us in Bria. We know that Atzilus, it's known that Atzilus is called Kinyan. Like we say in Kiddush Levana, Baruch Eisech, Baruch Yitzrech, Baruch Beirech, Baruch Kainech. The Eisech Yitzrech Beirech Him Gimel Elam Esasiya Yitzir Ubriya. Kainech Hatzos. We say in Kiddush Levana, Baruch Eisech, blessed is the one who creates you, makes you. Baruch Yitzrech, blessed is the one who formed you. Baruch Beirech, the one who created you. And then we say Baruch Kainech, the one who acquired you. What does that mean? So Oisech is Asiya, that's the lowest world. Yitzrech is Yitzira, a higher world. Beirech is Bria. And Kainech, that's Atzilus. What's the connection between Atzilus and Kinyan? So the Rebbe explains. The Kamoisha Kinyan Einei Havayas Davar Chadash Elagilei Ahelim, just as when we talk about Kinyan, acquiring, so acquiring is not something new, it's only revealing what was hidden. The Gam Kaidem HaKinyan Haya Davar. Al Shekaidem HaKinyan Kish HaDavar Haya B'Rishus HaMoicha Haya B'Ahelim L'Gabe HaGleikech. Vayidei Kinyan Ba'Davar Elav B'Gilei. Kein Hatzilus U'Gilei Ahelim. Just explain the Chassidus out there, brings in Torah. In other places, it's brought this idea that Atzilus is called Kinyan. Why? What's Atzilus mean? Atzilus, the word Atzilus, one of the meanings of the word Atzilus is to take, to separate from. It says, the Pasuk says about Moshe Rabbeinu, when the Eibishter was empowering the Skenim, the 70 elders, so it says, V'atzalti min haruach asher alecha, I will take from the spirit that's on you and give it to them. So there, the spirit of Moshe that's then transmitted to the elders is obviously a lower level than what was by Moshe. But use the word V'atzalti, to take from what was, to separate from there before. So Atzilus, why is it called Atzilus? Atzilus is higher than Bria. Bria is creation. So the Alter Rebbe explains, it explains in many places, that when we say Bria, creation, that's talking about something new. You call the Eibishter a Beira, a creator, when there's something new. There was nothing before, and now there's a creation. But Kinyan, the word Kinyan, to acquire, implies not something new, but something that was there before. So we use the word Kinyan to acquire something, buying and selling. What happens when you buy or sell something? I own something that I have, I'm selling it to you. So right now, the Lashon in Torah is it's munach b'kufsa, it's sitting in a box. I have something very valuable, it's sitting in a chest in my safe, right? And now you're going to buy it, and now it's going to be revealed it's going to be taken out of my safe, it's going to be now given to you. So right now, you don't own it, it's concealed from you. And then you buy it, you acquire it, but you're not acquiring something new, right? It's revealing something that's hidden. So the same is true with Atzilus. Atzilus means, like we said before, V'atzalti, the idea that it's revealing something that was hidden before, but not that there's something new. So you can't call Atzilus already. I don't want to get carried away on that topic, but that's the point. That Atzilus is called Kinyan. Okay? And why is it called Kinyan? Because it's the idea of revealing something that was hidden. So the idea of Yeshus, of existence, that already comes only that first appears in Bria. That's why it's called Bria, creation, because now there's something new. Atzilus, it's all godliness still. There's still nothing new. It's only revealing what was hidden. Okay? V'zeu shel ha'achri oimri asher tasim lifneihem moisif kisikne. Dagam shel me'atayr tzarech liyez b'havana v'asaga asher tasim lifneihem v'atri kras al shmoi tayra soy shel adam aloimda mikol makom tzarech liyez al limud ba'ofen sheyeh nigish etzlei shatayr shel loimed gam la'achri shenasis chachmasa yitayras havaya tayras cha shebatzilus tikna. So now we explain this idea of how tasim and sikna are two different things. That a yid we tell the teacher, you have to teach your students in a way of tasim l'fneim. They have to understand it very well. They have to understand it so well that, and all this is already. The first explanation, we're explaining how Kisikna is explaining the tasim, and here we're saying no, put it all into the asher tasim. Place it before them, tamam yashav talmud. They understand it thoroughly till it becomes Torah. So it becomes his Torah. He has ownership over it. And now that you've done that, now you have to. Now there's the next thing, Kisikna. They have to remember that it's still Torah of Atzilus, that even if it becomes your Torah in this world, nevertheless it's still Torah as it remains beyond this world. It's still Torah as it is in Olam Atzilus. Beyond, it's still Torah Savaya. Torah is the exact opposite of what we said before. Right? We were saying before, the whole point is that it becomes Dafka the Torah of the person. Right? And now we're saying, now it becomes Dafka the Torah of the person. You have to Torah is higher. So we'll have to address that. How are we doing on time? We okay? Still have some time? 4? 5? You learn in a way that you understand it thoroughly. But then afterwards, what has to be? Kisikna. So we see it's a new thing. But first it was Kisikna as an explanation of Tosim. How well does the person have to understand it? Kisikna. Now we're saying it's the exact opposite. Tosim, understand it thoroughly, becomes yours. And then remember Kisikna, that it's really beyond. That is beyond your understanding. Yeah? Okay. So now we can understand. So another question that we asked in the beginning of the Maimer. We asked in the beginning of the Maimer, we quoted from the Yerushalmi, the Gemara says that Asher Tasim Lifneim. So the word Tasim, the Gemara interprets to mean Sima. Sima, which means hidden. A hidden treasure, right? So we asked, what's this hidden treasure? We're talking about the mystical, which obviously we're talking about the secrets of Torah. How do you get to the secrets of Torah? And particularly here, where are we saying Tasim Lifneim, that there's the mystical element of Torah when we're talking about Mishpatim? I remember when we're asking the question, we're talking about, Rashi brings right in the beginning on Ve'ela Mishpatim, what are we talking about? The Tasim Lifneim, Lifneihem V'lo Lifnei Akum. We're talking about laws that are so rational that even a non-Jewish court would be able to rule the same way Torah would want you to rule. Right? So we're talking about the most rational of laws. And Dafke, in the most rational of laws, and even the most human morality, even in that element, we're saying Tasim Sima Razi Torah, the hidden part of Torah. Well, so we asked, how do you reconcile these two things? They seem to be incompatible here. Teach about the hidden parts of Torah when you're talking about the Parah Aduma. Over there, use that word Tasim maybe, that we're talking about the secrets of Torah. That makes sense. But by Ve'ela Mishpatim, so Rebbe explains. Ki b'chtei shebat Torah she'adam loimed u'mevin b'sichlei seichel anushi yeh niger shehi Torah's havaya Torah's choshev atzilus ki sikna hu al yidei gilei haneshama k'may shehi batzilus b'chinas Torah hi shelamayim b'chinas ata barasa. How is it? Because so the Rebbe says this is the whole point. With the Yerushalmi is saying that Asher Tasim Lifneim is Sima, the secrets of Torah, is to make this point. Since here we're saying that Asher Tasim Lifneim understand it well, and even after understanding it well, Kisikna, you have to remember that it's Torah, it's an Atzilus. How could it be that a person could study Torah, understand it, have it resonate with him strongly in his own human, small, finite mind, and at the same time recognize that it's beyond it? How does that happen? So that comes through recognizing this idea that Torah is really higher, that there's a mystical dimension, that the Torah is higher than his understanding, that Torah is Tahirahi. Let me explain it, and then we'll. You have in Torah, there's the hidden part of Torah, there's the revealed part of Torah, right? We're talking here now about Sima, the hidden part of Torah, the mystical part. There's the revealed part, Nigla, right? The halacha, the legal, the rational part of Torah, and then you have the mystical, the esoteric, the hidden part of Torah. That is the pnimius Torah. It's called pnimius, the inner part of Torah, the inner dimension, the hidden part. Same is true with regard to a yid. A yid has a neshama. You have the outer part of the neshama, you have the inner part of the neshama, the hidden part and the revealed part. We say every morning in davening, right in the beginning, on the first page, right? We say about the neshama shenasatabi, the neshama that you gave me is tahirahi, is pure. Ata barasa, ata yitzarta, ata nefachtabi. Here too, you have the same thing, the four elemus, right? So tahira, that's atzilus, represents atzilus. Barasa, that's bria. Yitzarta, yitzira. And nefachta, that's already ve'ata, hifsik, that represents asiya. But the question is, what are you saying? The neshama that you gave me is tahirahi ata barasa. How could it be tahirahi before barasa? First barasa, you created my neshama. So it should be, okay, we've already paralleled it to the world, so we know that Tahira is Atzilus, so Atzilus comes before Bria. But how do you reconcile that in Pashat Pshat? Barasa, you created it. So what's before Barasa, before you created it? How are you saying Tahira before? So the vart is that Barasa, Yitzarta, Nafachta, those levels, but the Neshama as it's in Bria, that's already the revealed part of the Neshama. The part of the Neshama, the outer part of the Neshama, that's already the Neshama as it comes from Bria and lower. But the hidden part of the Neshama, the deeper part, that's in Atzilus. All neshamas are mushish, they start up there in Atzilus. So that's the meaning of Tahir.